北京设计工厂 Design Factory 北京 De facto 团队，当代青年艺术家 Save Time 艺术联盟发起人孙世贤先生，秀素布偶艺术创始人、高级工艺美术师、中国工艺美术大师单秀梅老师。北京景山学校信息技术物理老师吴俊杰老师，北京国信品牌评价科学研究院院长杨希伦先生，清华大学专职创客 Zimmer Barnes。那么再次欢迎大家的到来。今早的论坛呢将分为2个部分。那么第一场论坛的主题是 De facto 的讨论专场 3D 打印出未来，将由 De facto 开展一场关于 3D 打印的自由讨论。第2场论坛将是智慧跨界，将由创客圈的各位专家为我们带来精彩的演讲。最后是自由讨论的环节。那么在几周前呢，创客教父米奇·奥特曼先生在歌华创意设计服务中心 DSC 接受了我们的采访。虽然因为行程的关系，他今天无法参加我们的活动，但是呢，他也用视频的形式给我们带来了美好的愿景。首先，让我们请看视频。
Okay, gentlemen, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Mitch Altman, probably best known for creating TV Be Gone, which is a keychain that turns televisions off in public places. I happen to have one here. I can show it to you. And it kind of got me famous. I made one for me, and it turns out that a lot of other people liked it, and I saw an opportunity from a project that I loved that I made for me, so I could make it available to other people, and it's the way I've made a living for the last 11 years. Since it got me internet famous, I sort of got invited to give talks and workshops around the world. And as I do that, I encourage people to, just see that it's a possibility that anyone, can make a living with a project that you love. And I love teaching people things about electronics and how to solder. So I do that. And the upcoming Mini Maker Faire is a place where maybe you can explore some things that maybe you didn't even know you were interested in. And if you are, then you can explore it further in places like we're at now, this design center, soon to be a Fab Lab, and any number of hackerspaces around the world. So, I just want to say, this is an unprecedented time in Chinese history. The government is actually going out of its way to support people in exploring and doing interesting things that might turn into new products and services that are not only good for you, but if they're good for you, they might be even good for people around you and maybe all of China and the world, who knows. So I would love to see and encourage as many of you as possible to come and explore. These are creative learning environments where you can do all sorts of amazing things.
So you talk about you're going around the world to help people how to found their makerspace or hackerspace. So how long would you stay in China this time?
This time, I go to China once a year. And for the last 5 years, I've been bringing a group of people with me to show them how manufacturing processes work, and also to visit hackerspaces so we can share our enthusiasm for our projects as examples for the kinds of things that people can do in hackerspaces, makerspaces, same thing. And this time we've been here for a month, and that's how long I've been staying in China every year when I come. And it's been 12 years now.
In your opinion, what's the aim or the goal that people hold a Maker Faire?
Maker Fairs are these really cool, large events where people from all over come to show off cool projects that they've done, and where people come to see cool projects that other people done, hopefully to get inspired to do something that they think is cool. Maybe they'll even find something they didn't even know they were interested in, and now they have something to explore, perhaps at a local hackerspace, makerspace, fab lab, whatever. There are all these communities now where people can explore this. And maker fairs are a place where people can really learn about all these things in a very cool, wonderful experience.
Well, it seems that makers are taking more and more important part in this society. So, what's your blueprint or what's your dream that makers will be in the future?
Well, I would love to see more people on our planet feel like they are living lives that they really feel are way worth living. Unfortunately, I think there's a whole bunch of people on our planet who don't really feel that their lives are way worthwhile. And, a lot of us don't have a lot of opportunities. One way that people can get opportunities is by coming together in supportive communities, in hackerspaces, as one example, and Maker Faire as, an occasional example, where people can be inspired to actually explore and do what they love. And the more time we spend doing what we love in our lives, the more we'll feel that what we're doing is meaningful. And as the hacker-maker movement grows, this is more opportunities for more people to explore and do what they love, and therefore have more meaningful lives. And as more people feel they're living more meaningful lives, that can't help but spread and help other people around us, and eventually help more people in the world. So that's my big dream for what the hacker-maker movement can do for everybody.
Okay, it seems that there's a relationship between the culture of maker and design. Yes, design affects people's life. So what's your opinion?
Yeah, well, they're very much interrelated, design and making things. Design, to be able to design well, it's really a way of looking at things in the world. And same with hacking, making, it's a way of looking at things. Seeing that anything in the world is a resource that we can use to make our projects cooler. As long as we've been on the planet, we as people on the planet have gotten together and created tools. Some of them work better than others, and we've learned over time to design things in ways that work well with who we are as people. Things that fit well in our hands, things that move well, things that are aesthetically pleasing so that more people can make better use of it. And people come across these notions from various different directions, some more from an aesthetic point of view, some from more of a functional point of view. But I think it's really cool when people come together with all these different skills and add to a particular project from their perspective, and collectively we can make it all better. So again, this is why communities are so wonderful. We can do a lot of cool stuff on our own, but we can do so much more together. So combining design elements into what we do as we make them just makes things way better.
Have you got some suggestions about DSC, Design Service Center, that it applies the mini maker fair successfully in Beijing? Have you got some comments or some suggestions?
Yeah, so Design Service Center here is a place that there's plans for having people come here and use some amazing tools. I would really like to see it as a place where people can come just to see what's happening. If there was a community of people here who are just trying things just for the joy of trying it, just to see what will happen, some maybe vague ideas, and coming and just trying it. There's some tools here to make things, right? So if you just have some kind of vague idea, you can try making some things, see what grows from it. And then if other people were invited here just whenever they want, it's open to the public, then it's a creative learning environment where people can become inspired and come up with new ideas of their own just by being here. And that's what happens in hacker spaces all over the world, including here in China. So I think that's really what China needs. That's what everyone in the world needs, is places where they can come to be supported and encouraged to explore and do things that they think might be really cool for them. And then if people find things that they think are really cool, maybe they grow a project from that. And if they have a project from that, then maybe other people love it too, and probably they will. And if other people love what you do, maybe some people will pay you for it. And if enough people pay you for it, maybe you can start a little company that can make these things and get them in the hands of people who can benefit from them. And that might just be something really good and perfect for the environment that you created it in. Maybe even the broader community around that. And if it's popular enough, your company can survive and thrive and grow, and maybe it's something that a whole bunch of people in the area will like. In particular, here in China, we need people here, Chinese people, making goods and services that are good and perfect for China, rather than just Chinese people making things that are already ideas from the West and making it maybe cheaper and better, which is cool. But it would be so much cooler, I think, if places like this supported people in exploring and doing what they think is really cool and awesome. And then it might grow into a thing that other people love that might even become the next big thing, who knows. But even if it doesn't, it's something unique and truly innovative that will add up together with other people being truly innovative and creative for helping the economy and the future here of China. And I would love to see that happen here, as I would love to see it everywhere in the world.
Sounds very good about your opinion. Thank you very much, Mitch Altman.
You're very welcome.
更多的优秀的中国的创客能够制作出更多适用于中国、造福于中国的好的设计、好的产品。那么在讨论开始之前，我们这里需要特别感谢一下为这个讨论会特邀到场的中国领先的工业软件和工业互联网公司北京数码大方的曹经理和张经理。OK， 好，接下来我们将请出 de facto 团队给我们带来以新的方式制作、以新的方式思考，为题的 3D 打印讨论专场，欢迎他们。
大家好，我们是来自3个不同的地方的，就是每个人会个人介绍一下，然后我们想跟你们，让你们了解我们现在要进行什么样子的活动项目和一些概念跟你们分享。我们从这边开始。
Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. First, I'd like to thank everyone, Faire, for allowing us to have this wonderful event, and for the DSC for organizing this great event. My name is Leandro Alone. I'm one of the founders of De Facto. De Facto is a 3D printing group based here out of Beijing. We're made up of a group of international designers, educators, and strategists that really are focusing on the future and the way we make things. This is sort of our main point of interest. I'm an architect. I'm actually a trained architect. I've been practicing architecture for about a little under 8 years. But my first 3D printing experience was about 10 years ago, and I would 3D print buildings. Little small buildings, and as we're moving towards the future, we're starting to see the possibility of 3D printing large buildings and real buildings, and so it's a really exciting time for us today. With that, I'm going to pass it over and so we can sort of introduce everyone on the panel. So we're right over here to Chen.
大家好，我就讲中文，今天在这里。我是现在在歌华 DSC 创新实验室担任负责人。然后我们现在有一个新的想法，就是说通过不同领域的大家针对不同的方向，然后来做一些自己喜欢的事情，然后在 DSC 的这样一个平台下面，大家共同创造新的一些想法。就这样。然后我个人主要，我们 DSC 将来的方向是很多关于数字艺术。然后我之前在美国的8年的 工作经历和学习经历中，主要针对的也是数字艺术这一块，然后同时包括画廊的经营和一些策展的活动。
我会说一半英文一半中文。我叫雪梅，现在我在做传统的纯银首饰。我是来自英国和美国，在北京长大的。然后我们现在一起有一些合作的项目，把这个特别传统的和比较新科技3D 打印这种东西，把它们结合到一起。发明了一些新的想法，新的概念之类的。然后 ，So I'm Hannah. I'm born and raised in Beijing, and I'm the creator of Hannah K Design Jewelry Company, which is 100% handmade, pure silver, handcrafted jewelry. And I'm here today with this team because we're finding new ways to combine an extremely traditional craft with groundbreaking technology and seeing what we can come up with.
Hello. Thank you, Hannah. I am Ami. I'm an architect from India. I've been involved in architecture and design for the past 5 years, and like Hannah said, most of us are here because we're interested in the conversation and the relationship between old traditional craftsmanship and groundbreaking new technologies. I'm also one of the co-founders of De Facto, like Leandro explained. We're a Beijing-based design company. We're looking into 3D printing, new forms of making, and how they relate to old traditional Beijing.
大家好, my name is David. I'm also co-founder of De Facto. I come from Austria, and I come with a background in international business and Chinese studies. And I'm a maker and designer by heart, and since I came to Beijing 2 years ago, I've been involved in Chinese traditional culture education. And since I met Leandro and Ami, I've been trying to combine Chinese traditional culture with new forms of making, especially 3D printing.
Great, so why are we here today? I think one of the reasons we wanted to have a discussion, kind of a very light discussion this morning for you, is to sort of introduce ourselves individually and also give you an idea of some of the projects we're working on right now. De Facto is a group that started about roughly around 8 months ago, but reality, the idea started several years ago. And it really was about how we can expose everybody, whether it's children or adults, students, professionals, to the possibilities of contemporary forms of making. 3D printing is one of these kind of really new, exciting technologies that we hear about often. And we're even starting to get to see, with great events like Maker Faire, we really get to see some of the really amazing technologies and machines that are out there. However, we're just now starting to see the potentials of what those technologies can do. And really where De Facto is interested is sort of in those potentials. One of the projects that we looked at, or we've been looking at for the past few months, has been, it's a project that's on the border of architecture and product design. It also merges areas of fashion and social impact. And the project is called Hive. You can see here directly behind me. This project was actually designed, it was commissioned by Feng Chaodi for Beijing Design Week. We were one of the featured projects in the mall there. And it was a really exciting opportunity for us. I think because it allowed us to really share with the Beijing community the possibilities of using 3D printing, not only on a small scale, which is what we typically see. We see lots of things like jewelry and iPhone cases and things like this. But we wanted to see what are the potentials of large-scale applications without the need for 3D printing an entire building. We asked ourselves, can we 3D print a structure that is a large structure with manageable pieces of 3D printed items? So in other words, each one of the small little white connectors on this pavilion over here are actually 3D printed. You can see them directly upstairs. We're in one of the booths right next to the main stage. this pavilion is made up of about 100 of these connectors. And one of the cool things about this project is all of this fits inside of a backpack. So this was like a really big goal for us. We said, can we conceptualize a project that fits within a backpack, that can be assembled within about an hour, and that anyone can build it? I encourage you all to go check out the project. When you get really close to the project, you're going to see numbers on each connector. And really these numbers, for us conceptually, we looked at this as kind of like a Lego set. What happens when you can give this set to anyone, whether it's a child or a group of adults in a foreign country, and give them the possibility of building this themselves without the need for instructions? And these are sort of our main goals going into this project. You can see here, as we look closer to the components of the project, on the left over here, we have this sort of 3D printing pieces. Now, this was a really great partnership that we've established with a company named Time. Many of you know Time. It's a really great 3D printing company here in Beijing. And they were sort of really great strategic partners of ours on this because they allowed us to sort of realize this project. With this project, we're really looking at sort of maximizing materials, right? So we have 3D printed connectors, and to the right, you see standard wooden pieces. These are pieces of wood that you can find in your typical hardware store. As you look at sort of the finished result, you start to see this kind of very dome-like project. And I think when many people look at the project, sure, you see a design piece. You see an item that's designed as a sort of very conceptual or artistic looking piece. But really we're asking ourselves, what's the potential of this kind of structure? And what we rarely get the opportunity to explain to people, and why we're really happy today to talk about this project, is for us, we were looking at this project as a type of prototype for something like disaster relief structures. What happens when there's an earthquake in some place like Nepal, what recently happened, and it takes so much resources, it takes governments and a lot of money to provide very basic things like shelter. So the idea of making this structure something that's very easy to construct and lightweight to transport, I think these are sort of the promises of a structure like this, and really 3D printing allows that to happen. So really the main question is not why is 3D printing sort of as a technology important, but more what can the technology enable us to do that we weren't able to do before. Yesterday, a really sort of intelligent engineer came up to us and said, well, couldn't we just manufacture these in a normal factory, like injection molding? And I explained to this person that each one of those connectors are made up of unique angles. So in other words, each one of those connectors are completely different than the other. To do this in a traditional manufacturing facility, this would take months or maybe weeks to produce with a large amount of startup investment. We were able to do this structure in about 4 days and assemble it within about 1 hour. So I think this is like the power of such an amazing tool like 3D printing. We have a short video. I'm not sure if we are able to show it yet. Okay. We'll probably show this video a little bit later on in the presentation. The video just kind of shows the ease of construction, and it's a little short video showing our sort of timeline in the progress. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Ami. Ami is one of the main designers in De Facto, and this was the project that we also did for this same project here. So with that, I'll pass it over to Ami to go.
Thanks, Leo. So like Leo said, we started working. We were commissioned to do this by Fang Xiaoli. We did some research about them. It's a high-end fashion mall, and we've always been interested in fashion. So we thought this would be the perfect opportunity for us to try something. We basically started with looking at the idea of hacking into fashion. What can you do that's different from everyone else, and how do you hack into this idea of fashion? So we developed this shell structure, which is like the top, which is modular, and that stays the same, and you can change the dress depending on the occasion. As you can see, like you can have the top in, we have it printed in white, but you can print it in different materials, in different textures, and it was completely custom designed for the mannequin that was there. and the bottom of the dress, on this you can see there's two of them. Upstairs we have it so that it looks almost like a wedding gown, but you can switch it so that you can wear it as a cocktail dress, or you can change it to anything you want. So the top is made specifically to your sizes, specifically designed for you, and the bottom can be changed whenever you want. And as you can see, we used computer-generated design for that, and but the whole idea of looking at this was when we were looking at height, we wanted to design the queen bee. We thought, how do you make the queen bee stand out? And we thought this was, it looks at the same patterns and the same design motifs as the structure, and sits inside the structure perfectly.
Right, Ami, can I ask you a question? How do you think 3D printing will affect the future of fashion?
Right, I mean, okay, I think I was reading this article the other day about this company that has started looking at shoes, and Nike released a statement the other day that you're no longer going to buy shoes, but a traditional 3D printer is going to be embedded in your cupboard, and you make your shoes for the day, and then you put them back, and then the plastic is again taken in, and you print another set of shoes. So you won't actually have to buy shoes, you will download shoes. And I think in the future you can also, I have hyper reality, but you can go into these scan booths and scan yourself completely, and things will be made specifically for you. With that, I think I'll pass on to David to talk about the workshops.
Sure. Real quick, just a point I want to make on the fashion end. 3D printing has the potential to really transform the fashion industry. It has the potential to transform all industries. We may not be yet at the point where Ami has mentioned where we will be 3D printing our clothing tomorrow. In the not so distant future, we may be 3D printing our clothing in our closets. So a scenario might be, I get home today, I take my shoe off, I put it inside of a machine, it sort of chops it up and creates a new shoe the following day for me, sent by Nike or Adidas or any other shoe company. This is a very kind of crazy imagination for the future, or vision for the future. And I think while it may be possible, we're not quite there yet. De facto, one of the projects that we're really trying to look at right now is sort of ask ourselves, what's the link between where we are now and where we will be in the future? And so for this dress right here, we were really trying to sort of conceptualize this idea of accessible fashion. So if you want to get married and you wanted to have a wedding dress that looked like this, you would come to our studio, we would 3D scan your body, and we would build a dress completely around your parameters. It wouldn't fit the next bride or the bride after you or before you. It would only fit you. It would be a completely unique and custom gown made to order based on your full requirements, materials, sizes, everything. So while we might not be 3D printing our clothing yet in our own homes, we are at the point already where we can be 3D printing our custom outfits within studios like the Facto Studio. And this is some of the projects that we hope together with Chuchen, with Hannah, and sort of with the Facto group to sort of establish these ideas further and bring these possibilities to the Beijing community and to China at large. Right, so I'm going to pass it over to David. The video's ready.
Do we?
Sorry, real quick, we're just going to kind of go through the video here. So, what we're seeing now is sort of the beginning of the hive structure, what it takes to build a structure like this. You can see that we're using very sort of rudimentary tools, measuring tape, in a very normal setting. You don't require a factory or some sort of crazy construction site. We are literally grabbing these pieces, these sticks, these connectors, and popping up the installation in multiple parts of Beijing. Here are the connectors, and What you'll see now is sort of the very beginning of our first attempt to build this structure. Probably one of the most exciting parts of this project, because as we're building it, you can start to see people, like the gentleman right over here, slowly approach us and say, what are you guys doing and why are you doing this? Are you guys artists? Are you guys, just hooligans trying to pollute the city? They didn't quite understand what we were doing. But over time, over the next few minutes, as people begin to approach the structure, they begin to realize that there's some intelligence built into this. And without us really being able to explain to them, partly because of our lack of language or ability to communicate here, they were able to understand what we were doing. And not only were they able to understand, but they would come real close and they touch the 3D printed pieces and they sort of try picking them up and connecting them with the wood. It's a really, really exciting moment for us because we were starting to see the idea become a reality. And that reality, once it was brought to the sort of Beijing community, or just really any community, is probably one of the most satisfying moments for an artist. You actually are able to realize that idea. So what's cool about this is you can see the crane kind of in the background. This is sort of the very traditional way of how we make things, right? We have all these amazing buildings. We're sort of trying to make a provocation or a question. How else can we make? Are there different ways of making? So this was the night before our event. Unfortunately, we were stopped by the rain, so we had to sort of take the entire structure down. And we went to one of our partners' apartments here, and we said, let's build this thing inside, why not? And this is actually at the site, this is at Feng Chao Di, this is during the construction of the final project. It's really interesting, even the workers would come over and just kind of pull on the sticks a little bit and see like what was going on. Now, I don't want to present an image that says we created the perfect structure, because it's not perfect by any means. It has lots of issues. We learned a lot from the structure, and I think that in the art of making, why we're so obsessed with this idea of making is that by making, we were able to learn what not to do, and what to do, what were the good things and what were the bad things. And so now, we hope to bring the structure even further. We're teaming up with people like the UN to talk about disaster relief structures. We've been asked by Tier Times to sort of build this for their next major event. And we hope to work with other major companies and design similar structures to really to highlight this special type of structures. Great. We'll move it on over to David, back to the workshops.
So De facto has 3 points of focus. We're as Leandro and Ami have been talking about our design aspect, that is a big focus of De facto. The 2 others are education and research. Now, I'm going to be talking about the education part. Actually, since we started from the very beginning, we started doing workshops, and we've been doing workshops for over 8 months now, for adults and children. And we've been, in the beginning, we did really short workshops, just 3-hour workshops, just to, because so many people were asking us, 3D printing, what is it about? I heard you can 3D print guns, but what else can you do? So we thought it would be a good idea just to get people excited about it, just as we are excited about 3D printing and design. Teaching is actually a great way to learn. We learned a lot about design process and making processes just by teaching other people to do it. So one thing, for example, that we realized was that it's, in the beginning we were focusing a lot about teaching people how to 3D print and 3D model. And we quickly realized that this is not where we can add the most value. In education and new forms of making, where you want to go is you want to teach people how to make. Now that the whole making culture is becoming so big, you have maker fairs around the world, and it becomes really easy to make things. but it doesn't necessarily mean that we make things better or we make better things. So that's where we want to add value in our education sector is we want to teach people how to make things good, how to make things better. We think making involves creative thinking, independent thinking, and working together, how to work in teams. Really, how do you add meaning and function to whatever you work on, whatever you make. And this is what we want to focus on in our education part. So one thing that we do in our workshops is we want to combine traditional Chinese culture with new forms of making, like 3D printing. This is a way for us where we draw inspiration as designers. How do you add meaning to your product? So for example, this is a workshop that we did, and we were looking at Chinese lattice designs, which has a history of over 3,000 years. And so in that sense, a very successful design. And how can we incorporate it with new forms of making, in that case, 3D printing? So we did a workshop, and we had people look at lattice designs, telling them the history and the importance of lattices, Chinese lattice windows, and really draw inspiration from that and make a 3D printed bracelet with that design. So this is a way, for example, to add meaning to your products or draw inspiration in everyday life. This is what we try to incorporate in the education sector.
Right. One of the really exciting opportunities that we had working in this project, David worked with an organization called the Courtyard Institute. And the Courtyard Institute is really an organization that's sort of looking into the preservation of Chinese culture and traditions. So they're looking at things like calligraphy and architecture and art. And we found ourselves in a very interesting point where we said, look, we're interested in 3D printing, but as designers and as engineers, we tend to often get caught up in our own sort of battles or our own sort of interests. With the Courtyard Institute, it gave us an opportunity to say, can we look at our context and can we sort of tap into this idea of preservation using new tools? So the Lattice project is one of them. We talked about the idea of scanning buildings and 3D printing them, utilizing drone technology and 3D scanning technology. So I think these are all ways to say that tradition and original, let's say crafts, the way we used to make things, don't necessarily need to go against future technologies. And I think hopefully we can talk a little bit more about that later on with Hannah.
We only have 5 minutes left, so we should go quickly.
No, we've gone through 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So real quick, this is another project that we did. This is a really cool project that we sort of, we're designers, we're professionals, we have clients, we care about revenue and return on investment and all these really amazing things that make the world go round. But from time to time, we ask ourselves, hey, can't we just work on a freaking cool project? And this was kind of one of these projects. We had a 3D printer at home, and we said, is it possible to make this 3D printer print food? And so it was a question that we sort of posed to each other, and we said, it may seem very impossible, and there are many companies sort of having this conversation right now, but we thought, why wait for those companies to come out with these really expensive machines? Why not try it ourselves? So we did the research, we went on the internet, we figured out a way to hack into our 3D printer so it would 3D print chocolate. Here you can see this was actually at one of the events that we had several months ago at MoMA. It was a great event. We invited about 20, 25 people, 200 people showed up. As you can see, we were 3D printing little flat patterns over here, but over on the left behind the printer, you start to see three-dimensional pieces of chocolate that we're using 3D printing molding technologies. So, as I mentioned before, 3D printing has the potential to affect multiple industries. And I think the food industry is one of these industries that is, it's just one of these industries that's waiting to get tapped into. When we met Chu Chen, one of the first conversations that we had was about this idea of food and the future of food. And hopefully later on we can talk a little bit more about Chu Chen's interest in this and sort of our interest in working together to develop not only new types of food, but intelligent foods and beautiful looking foods. So with that, that's a little bit about de facto. I'd love to pass it on to Hannah, who's got just some amazing work. She can tell you a little bit about that.
所以我是做比较传统的纯银首饰。我今天来这里不是跟你们说这个已经几百年的历史的一个手工，我想跟你们讲的是，为什么在2015年我们需要去把这个做法稍微变一点，不是说明把这个手工的东西完全拿3D 打印来替换，不是，因为有的东西3D 是打印不出来，包括有的东西手工是做不出来。所以我们的目的就是，我们怎么可以把这个2个东西融合到一起，然后去发明一些新的想法，一些新的概念。然后包括你看我们几个人没有2个人是一个国家的，所以我们不只是把这个以前的这个传统的和现代的科技变到一起，我们也是想把这个东方和西方融合在一起。我们就觉得。有很多东西就是需要这个新的概念。第一，我们想有点影响在教育的方面，我们想就是我们跟那个 DSC 有合作，可能是从明年开始，我们想教这些想法，这些新的做法。第二，我们想接受不同的客户也是有这种想法的，不是说对 OK 纯打印、纯手工。用这个2个东西还可以有什么想法？还可以就是没有做到的东西还可以怎么做得到？就是比较我们不想让人说 OK 一定是这样子，一定是这样子，画一个格你填，不是，我们想说这个2个东西编到一起，有什么我们没有想到的可以做得到。所以我就是你们现在可以看我有一些作品，这些全是我手工打的，然后我比较喜欢用中国的历史和文化，把它带到一个天天你能戴的首饰装饰。这是蛇和贝壳，刚才是中国的龙。右边是一个我手刻的那个4合院合同，左边是蒸馒头的那个笼屉。我只是想给你们说，不一定是长得像中国的人会有这些比较中国的想法。你知道，现在2015年我们已经是一个很国际的世界，然后我觉得我们5个人来到一起，就是还会发明新的文化、新的这些想法之类的。
So I met Hannah about a year ago, almost now, and you know, here's Hannah who's speaking Chinese fluently. To me, as a foreigner, that was like already pretty amazing. She shows up with boxes full of these just like really incredible jewelry, and as a guy who's interested in making and really beautiful objects, naturally I was really attracted to her jewelry. The question for me as a company, as a startup that's really focused on 3D printing, the first question for me was, well, can't we just 3D print this? Right? And that was sort of the first question that I asked Hannah. And I guess the answer is, yeah, sure, we could 3D print that. And you can 3D print just about anything these days, but does that take what's special from what she's doing away a little bit? For me, the answer has gone between yes and no for quite some time. I've had a battle within. After talking to Hannah more and learning more about her craft and learning how this sort of tradition has been passed down to her through generations, and learning that this tradition is something that has literally sort of developed over centuries here in China, it makes me realize that no, 3D printing jewelry isn't necessarily the way to go. But there still is a question, which is, can 3D printing transform this in a way or make it even better? And not in a way that sort of just replaces Hannah. We don't want to replace Hannah with a machine. But we think, and sort of through our talks, and I hope where our work is going in the future, we think that we can develop some processes using 3D printers that will allow Hannah to do her work, whether it's more efficiently or perhaps provide a new take, a new sort of interesting perspective. That for the first time we can start to look at the real intersection between handcraft jewelry and 3D printed making. So this is sort of the beginning of a conversation that we're having right now. We hope to continue this conversation further. This is like another beautiful project.
这个是那个长城，就是我给你们展示的，就是一些我觉得是比较中国的一些产品。
So with that, I'd like to pass it over to Chu Chen, who's got some really just awesome work here. Maybe he can tell you a little bit about it.
大家好，我主要是我个人特别感兴趣这种，一是当代艺术形体上的这些形式，包括它的形体。然后其次，我是一个在中国出生长大，然后经历了8年的时间在海外的学习和生活，所以我自己本身也是一个这种东西方文化中间站在十字路口上去摸索的这样一个艺术家也好，或者设计师也好。然后这是我刚到美国的时候看过就是类似于他们对英文字母的一个建筑的一个表述。然后我们能看到这个不管是当代现代的还是后现代的想法，在这个仿体的表面的后面，他们对一切的这种细节也好，或者是形体整个把控也好，都是非常有自己的想法。然后于是我想，那我作为一个中国人，然后我来的文化，我来的国家里边的那个书法或者是字是另外一个形式的，就完全与西方是不同的一个 topic。然后我小的时候练书法，我就还记得那种感觉，就是你的手拿着这根笔，然后在那个纸上特别的有那种起起落落的一种感觉。然后我记得那个墨水和纸在交融的时候，那个纸里边的那些纤维就会吸那个就是墨水里的这些水，然后它会张开，变得很有中国文化的味道。然后于是我就想，作为一个设计师或者是形体雕塑师，为什么我不能把中国的这种笔画的感觉带到一个3维的空间里？于是我就做了这样一个小的一个艺术设计。然后下一个 next， 这是刚才的那些笔画从侧边看，就是从前面看的一些view。下一张 next please。所以说，当我把这些每一个笔画的形体具体分解的时候，我会把它分解成主要的结构，然后还有它的次结构，还有它的楼板，包括外表皮，还有支撑的这个电梯等。然后经过这些一系列之后，一系列这个笔画单一的单元创作之后，我觉得就是我可以把这些不同的形体的笔画的形体重新组合到一块儿，让它从这个2D 的一个空间，然后生长到一个整个3D 空间的这样一个构图的这样3D 的一个构图。这是其中另外的几个笔画。然后我觉得这个作品解释了我从中国文化到西方文化之间的这样一个交融的一个过程。然后我就在想，这个是这个是我们在去年的时候，14年的时候，我在纽约当时给我老板工作的时候，我们做了一个给Helsinki 古根汉的一个 proposal。然后我们当时想的这些就是当代艺术，我不知道大家知不知道 Jeff Koons， 就是他用很多他用金属的材质做很多这个长得像气球一样的这个 object 物体，像小狗啊，还有一些蛇呀什么的。然后我们这个整个 个这个楼的这种建筑的整个外表结构，我们当时就是找了很多，准备了很多不同的物体，包括这是它的侧面图。这个就是刚才我提到这部分，它就是用金属的材质去表达，一些比如像气球一样的材质，让这个观众们看见这个之后，觉得它很轻。就这样的材料和它的艺术表达，造成了一种错位的一个理解方式。然后我们这个建筑也是这样去思考，这样就是拿了很多有 Hello Kitty 啊，还有这个 Donald Duck， 还有鳄鱼，还有unicorn 就是天马，独角兽，就是各式各样的物体全部收集在一块儿，然后在建筑的表体上。你也可以看到一些熊猫，还有我们也拿了这部分的那个气球的那个，还有鸭子，还有不同的这个卡通的图像。这个是我在08年的时候，也是在这家建筑事务所里边，然后当时我们就想做一个室内空间特别炫的，然后让人们一进去之后忘不了的这样一个空间。我们当时就是用这种很反光的镜面材质，然后用三角形的这个几何形体表达了这样一个空间。然后这个房间是08年在纽约是给 Lady Gaga，她所有穿过的 costume 的一个 exhibition showroom。然后这个是她没有开，就是里边所有的衣服，包括模特的这个造型，都是我们由一体设计下来的。它然后这些镜面的材质，是每一片是一个 plywood， 是一个是 plywood 做的背景，然后上面贴上了银色的这个反光材质，然后再用那个金属的 connector 把这些所有的板连在一块儿。这个是它开灯的时候的一个效果。它是两个镜子，然后这样可以对反的时候形成的这样一个无限延伸的空间的一个效果。所以说我个人是比较特别感兴趣于这个文化和当代艺术，还有这个不同形体的结合。所以说我觉得当我们5个坐在一块儿的时候，大家都有不同的优点。然后我们就是今天想讨论，继续往下一个讨论的话题是，我们5个人怎么用各自的优点去做出来这个新的东西，更有趣的东西。那我不知道你怎么觉得？
我得先说英文，因为他们3个听不懂。So what Chuchen said is, so us 5, clearly 5 from 5 different countries, 5 different backgrounds. When we come together, what do we have to offer that makes us different? What do we bring to the table? What makes us unique? Why us?
It's a great question. I think when you look at history, right, you look at sort of all the amazing inventions and innovations that have sort of changed humanity. The history books tend to always write about one person. There's always like a person, whether it's like an Edison or a Tesla or whatever it may be. But rarely is it one person that's involved when innovative technologies or movements really change society. Typically, these innovations happen in collaborative efforts. And I think each one of us in our own right could probably design our way out of a box and do something really interesting. That's one part of the equation. I think that where we're moving now is the possibility of seeing what happens when we put us all together. So yeah, it's a good question. What happens when you take these backgrounds, these cultures, sort of different interests, and where are we headed? Collaborating is a big word that sounds really like fun and easy, and it's not. It's hard. It's really hard. Collaborating is, you have different personalities. You deal with people that have, complete aesthetic interests and hand-making interests and sort of really geeky, techie people interests. At the end of the day, we come from completely different backgrounds, so we disagree a lot. But that's okay. I think one thing that we've learned aside from just being friends, and really our collaborations have led to us becoming friends, is that we can kind of all have different opinions, we can have different standpoints, but ultimately in the end, really where we're innovating is bringing these ideas onto a table and saying, okay, here's my idea, let me pass it on to David. David, what do you think of this idea? And he'll sort of take it apart and say, this idea sucks, it's not so good. But what if we looked at this? And then Hannah may come back and say, well, actually, Leo was talking about something kind of interesting, but David, you have a good point. And somewhere along the way, we tend to then create something new. And I think hopefully with where we're headed in the future, we can kind of show that is possible. That it's probably more special than any one innovation that we do is the simple fact that we can come together with all of these backgrounds and do something great.
Also, I think our backgrounds allow us to look at a problem or a product or a process from different perspectives. Like Leandro pointed out, we all have different aesthetic interests, we all have different technical interests, but the way we approach a problem is very unique. And because the way five of us look at things differently, when we look at one problem, we come up with 5 different solutions that most of which may work, or sometimes David's solutions don't work.
And also, the thing is, when you have 5 different perspectives like this, it's not necessarily there's one right and one wrong. It's kind of like we bring our 5 to the table and we combine them to create the best solution. And that is combining backgrounds, cultures, histories, techniques, aesthetics, and everything else that they mentioned. But it's to cater, for a specific client or a specific need, to be able to bring different things from each of us to create that perfect fit for what we're trying to, create or trying to invent.
This is a really fascinating conversation, and to be honest, I know we could sit here all day long and talk about it, but unfortunately we don't have that kind of time. I'd like to just close out by saying that this is a very unique time in China's history, and within the history of all the advent of technologies and all these kind of very specific interests. And I think together we hope to sort of bring that all under the roof of DSC, and with the advent of the Fab Lab, and really offer this conversation and spread it out to the public. We sort of want to open this lab up for everyone, for the public to come in and not just be a student, but be collaborators with us. To come in and bring your own opinions and your own backgrounds and your own interests, and not be scared to say, well, they're professionals and maybe I'm not. We're very open-minded individuals, and I think that that's something that we really hope to foster in the future. So with that, thank you very much for having us today, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Do we have any questions from the crowd?
Actually, we don't have time
okay, I'm sorry, we don't have time for questions. If you do have questions, come follow us.
其实如果你们有问题的话，私下也可以跟他们去讨论。Yeah, that would be great. Thank you, thank you guys. 其实我刚刚看他们那个 title， 我觉得说 3D OK， 我想3D， 那我可能以为他们是 bunch of engineers 工程师。后来听了一听，才发现原来他们是文艺青年，原来是设计师、文艺设计师们。所以说，其实现在这样的跨界的设计师 makers 真的是越来越多。那么他们也制作出特别棒的产品，但是他们同时强调了从不同的 background 过来的这样的 makers creators， 他们在一起可能做的东西可能有时候是重要的，但是做的过程其实也改变了他们的每一个人对世界的观点啊。同时，那些观看这个作品的可能也会有一些改变。好，接下来让